Okay, chat. Mourn with us. Not just for how terrible our stream is right now, and it's pretty bad, but mourn with us for the lost opportunities of playoffs. What on earth happened?
8th place, man. That is so close to not even being better than spring.
Dude, I didn't even think of it that way. And now I
Yeah.
feel it's so much worse.
I'm here to just kind of break it down for you in the worst
Oh
possible
my
way.
gosh. Poof says they took our quality like they took our playoff dreams. Love you guys. Love you guys. Our playoff dreams are dead and gone. And in the worst way, too.
Let's keep this analogy going for 1 second. Our quality is scuffed. It's over. This version of this pod, this episode, it ain't gonna do it. We're not gonna make playoff podcast with this pod. But you know what? We're gonna work so hard in the off season. We're gonna grind. We're gonna do content. We're gonna make episodes. This is gonna be a reflection point for us to look back on and say, look what we could accomplish when we put our nose to the grindstone, get to work. How do you like that for an analogy? Yeah, you like that? That's good.
I think we should just end the show.
We got to get back to work, guys. Sorry, we got to leave.
No, listen. I don't even. Okay, actually, that's a good point. So what we're going to do is we are not going to talk about roster moves extensively, which I know a lot of people want us to talk about. I put out the call for like, all right, like, what are your questions? What are your takes? And everybody was
boom.
sending us roster takes. We're going to do that in a separate show where we'll talk about our roster needs, how we feel, where everyone stands. But tonight is not that night. We may mention some things in passing and kind of casually talk about it, but we're not going in depth on that. So,
and I think really quickly, the reason for that is if you're thinking about 2020 spring, which I think I'm actually kind of refreshed to see so many people are thinking about that already. Like, as a fan, our fan base is saying, okay, hit fast forward. Like, let's get back on stage and play more League, because what that tells me is that the fan base is committed to seeing what comes next. That's the right place to be as a fan. I think the thing to remember also is we got a ton of really important information at the end of this split, because we had games that were so influential and that had so much weight. You can't gloss over those. You can't fast forward through that part of this. So what we've decided is, before we get into speculation and wish listing and scouting, air quotes, is let's just take a moment to reflect, because we're going to have a lot of time to do all that other stuff. And there's going to be a lot of other teams doing a lot of stuff too after playoffs finish up. So we've got plenty of time to do that. Right now, what we should do is just look at the last weekend, week 9. It's like every other week that we've done. This is a week 9 show.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, man, because there's also some new context that came from this week with playoffs on the line, some high-pressure games. We got to see how the team responded in those situations. It wasn't the response we wanted, but at least there's some lessons to be learned. So we will talk about a little bit about what the split means for us and everything. So it's not like we're completely glossing over that, but we definitely want to start focusing on these games and start with the bad news, okay? The bad news is, you guys might have seen me confidently make a bet with the league leaders, guys, about game 1 from this weekend, the Clutch Gaming game, in which I agreed to buy a terrible, hideous, repulsive, not stylish jersey of Clutch Gaming,
classic mustard,
in ghostly mustard and black, if we were to lose the game. And because the universe is conspiring against me at this very moment, that is exactly what happened. We lost the game. I have been forced to pay $70 for a terrible, terrible, repulsive thing. What am I going to do? Like, they're going to deliver it to my house, and I might refuse it. I might just say, send it
just
back.
Don't sign. Tell your family to hide when the delivery person comes. Go to the basement.
A bet is a bet, all right? And the league leaders guys are our dear friends. We're stuck with them, whether or not we're winning. And it was a lot more fun when we were winning, but now we're not.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was.
So the bet is that I have to wear that jersey on a podcast or a Rec League stream or something. I'll clarify it with Zach, but definitely on stream, I got to wear that thing. And I am not looking forward to it. The good news is it's going to be a while before it shows up because it was a pre-order thing. So it's like not even going to ship until like the end of August. But watch out. When you see me wearing the ghostly pale nastiness of the Clutch Dignitas crossover jersey, that is out of duty and obligation to the bet that I had made because I'm a man of my word. Okay.
We are men of our words, if nothing else. Can I just say, you always want to beat your rivals. You always want to win. You always want to win your bets. Personally, and I don't know if you share this sentiment. We haven't talked about this. I am personally glad to see the Clutch guys in the playoffs. I think that that team has made a lot of strides. They've made a lot of improvements. They beat us twice this split. So, as a fellow new organization, as an organization with a fan podcast, I have to say I am going to be rooting for them personally in the playoffs.
So I'm rooting for my guys George and Zach. I like them. I'm not rooting for that team though, man.
Well, how do you root for them without rooting for the team?
For them to be happy in life. Look, I am too.
So you hope their team loses, but you hope they get promoted at work or something like that.
Upset about the loss to make that allowance now. So let's talk about this loss, okay?
Let's talk about this loss.
There were a lot of weird things. This matchup frustrates me so much because I alluded to this when we talked about it last week. I feel like Clutch is a very they're a consistent team, right? But the level of consistency is really like comparatively low. Like I feel like they constantly play like a 7th place team. You know what I mean?
We squeaked into 6th.
Unfortunately, like that's the level that we were playing at too. Now it's like we have such higher highs than they do, right? I forget. Let's see. They play Golden Guardians this weekend too, right? They literally don't have a win over a team that's like ranked above them. They literally don't even have one. And that just is frustrating me so much. Like I'm having trouble like coming to terms with this because to me it means we could have won this game. We should have won this game. But because we are a little inconsistent and a little up and down, we weren't able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. We weren't the better team. That's how I think I felt at the end of this game and this weekend, but specifically at the end of this game, I just felt like we weren't the better team. It's as simple as that. I don't feel like this was a squandered opportunity for us. I don't feel like this was us, just kind of throwing a season away. I honestly feel like at the point in our development that we're at, we just aren't a better team than a lot of the teams that have made it into playoffs over us. So, and that's how I feel about Clutch. I feel like they have been on a similar path of improvement. Now, that doesn't mean that they're like a great team because, like you said, they lose to teams who are above them in the table consistently. At least we can say we've picked up a lot of wins off teams that are very, very good, which I think in some ways kind of gives us this false sense of progress.
False?
Right? I mean, do I mean false? Yeah, I mean false. I think that we lost to teams this weekend. So we lost 2 games to Clutch this split. We lost 2 games to Golden Guardians this split. We lost a key game to OpTic this split. Those are all teams who were just breaking into playoffs. You don't get into playoffs if you don't beat those teams. And I think when you can steal a game from the top of the table, that makes you kind of like a sleeper, right? That doesn't make you a consistent and strong
team. Logic, man. But it's like, look at like some of the teams that we've beaten. Like we played Liquid like super close. We beat C9. We dismantled TSM. Like wasn't even a game against TSM. And we just beat CLG, who was playing for the bye with C9. You know, like we're capable of beating those teams. Like, so it's not like I don't think it's that Clutch is a better team than us. I think they were more consistent than we were.
Like in the key moments?
No, not in the key moments. I mean, they're clearly
they
we
made it
dropped a
to
key moment, right? We dropped against OpTic, and you can argue we dropped against Clutch, but I mean, like they were better than us. They were more consistent the whole time. You know what I mean? Like it's not that they were racking up wins at the end of the split.
I get what you're saying.
It's they always beat the teams that were on the bottom half of the board. So
they beat the non-playoff teams.
To me, it's not that like they're purely better. They just happen to be more consistent.
Is this how the math works? Check me on this. I'm being honest. If you lose every match against the 1 through 5 teams and you win every match against the 7 through 10 teams, do you mathematically make playoffs? Is that how this works?
No, it's not necessarily. No.
Okay, not necessarily. Because that would actually put you under 500.
Yes, but it's not necessarily that way.
Yeah. Because you would have 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 4 teams with 2 wins.
That's right.
Plus,
that's
8.
They're in 5th
you're 8 and 8
anyway. They're not in 6, right?
Yes, I mean, but if you do that, you finish the split 8 and 8.
Yeah, but no, that's that. There's 18 games. You finished at 8 and 10.
That's not.
Look, this is not the Clutch Gaming podcast, so I don't want to dwell on this. All I'm saying is, this game is a manifestation of what frustrates me about the team this split, and that's we can't be consistent when we need to. All right, we know that when things are firing on all cylinders, we're very tough, we're very competitive, and we could smash a team like Clutch. It just happens that a lot of the time we're not firing on those cylinders, you know? So
So should we get back into this game? Like what is it about this game that you felt prevented us from firing on those cylinders?
I've been trying to think about that, and there are 2 things that I kind of point to. I think like it falls under one category, general category, and to me that was just disjointed fighting and communication with the team. We weren't on the same page the whole game. To me, that's pretty evident. Like I watched back the highlight video, like the extended highlight video. So there's like an 8-minute thing that I watched, and it just every single time it's like 2 people would be thinking one thing and 3 people would be thinking the other, you know. And that seemed to be a common thread that ran through it, and it showed itself in a couple ways that I think were pretty important. One is that we saw the return of the weird Aframu death. Okay. And this made a return at a bad time. In one instance, he was trying to freeze the wave in bot lane and got greedy with it, and they made him pay very easily. Yeah.
Yeah. He thought the marksman had backed.
Did he even? I don't even think that's the case. I just think he just thought he would have that cushion and he could freeze and get away, you know, like W away or something, because he's on Rakan.
Yeah.
And then the other one was in mid lane later in the game. He got caught out, just like they didn't even have the kill on screen because it happened so suddenly. Like they were on him. And it was like, okay, cool, whatever. And then they panned away, and as they panned away, it was like Cody Sun killed Aframu or whatever. And he didn't even like try and flash away or anything. Like he got cut out with his summoners. It was weird.
Yeah.
So we had 2 of those kind of at times that threw things off a little bit. So that was a thing.
And that's him on Rakan,
comfort
which
champ.
I feel like has been one of his champions of the split. Like he's made some of his biggest plays, his best games on Rakan.
And then the other thing is like the disjointed thing for me was that Baron contest that we didn't actually put our hearts into. If you remember that, we were kind of it was basically like if they get Baron, the game's over. I don't think it was 3v5. I think it was 4v5. And chat will correct me as always, but it just seemed like they couldn't make a decision on what they were going to do. Well, the fact was they had to contest that or they were going to lose the game. there wasn't really another answer.
Yep.
Like if Baron goes over to them, your only chance in that instance is to get a weird like TP flank from behind, take out the back line, and then, maybe you stalled long enough. But in that situation, they needed to contest, and they couldn't decide. And because they couldn't decide, it wasn't that they were away and safe. They were in danger because they were just going back and forth and got caught out and got wiped out. And so they didn't even get a chance to fight off the push at the end. So, and chat's saying it's 3v5, by the way. But still, like, in that situation, you got to do something.
Yeah, 3v5s are so hard because you're kind of, it's basically you're throwing a Hail Mary. You're hoping to get a steal by some freak chance, or I just think of your Ash arrow, right? Like that's the kind of thing that you need.
That will live in infamy.
Like a weird moment. Yeah. Or, yeah. So, not to excuse that play, but it is, and I think to your point, we've talked so much in the last 4 or 5 weeks, especially about how impressed and pleased we are with the level of decisiveness we've seen exactly in those kinds of situations, right? And those are the kinds of things, and I think we can talk in the next game, the CLG game, about exactly that, where there were multiple situations that were entirely out of our favor, that there one single moment of decisiveness, maybe even from one player, completely.
I'm digging this roll swap though, because I'm going to not let you transition into that game.
Okay. Oh, I'm not trying to transition. Just that was a teaser.
Yeah,
it was a teaser, because I think that's what was missing in this game was the decisiveness.
Some people were pointing to draft stuff, and here's what I'll say on that: like, they banned Sejuani away from us. That's the smart thing to do. Okay, I'm quite frankly ecstatic that we still got amazing on Jarvan. To me, that was pretty unreal. If you notice,
he's very good.
If you notice, the Corki got through still. So it's not, and they banned Yuumi, which, again, other teams must know something that we don't about our Yuumi, because it keeps getting banned against us. I don't get it either.
I still don't.
Maybe we'll get some additional information from somebody who hears this in the team and is like, oh yeah, Afremu crushes on Yuumi now or something. But yeah, the way it played out, it was like, okay, we got Jarvan. That's not so bad. We got Afremu on a comfort champ. A lot of people didn't like the Poppy pick. I liked the Poppy pick.
Yeah.
I saw Poppy do crazy stuff in the Academy game in a similar situation. And like, I think Poppy on paper works. And you can build like a super tanky Poppy and it just gets impossible to kill.
Well, and now they've got the dash count on the Poppy, right? You've got Akali, Irelia, Gragas, Leona. Like, I think that's 4 dashes, right? I don't know if Leona's counts as a dash, if it's like a hook kind of deal. But anyway, at least 3, potentially 4. I'm not sure exactly how the mechanic works, but there's a lot of, meta stuff in the mechanics as well that makes sense for that. That doesn't speak to anything other than the potential to interrupt some of those things. I didn't really see that didn't make a huge difference in the game. So, but it's a new mechanic. It's a newer thing too. So
I just liked it. I liked the pick. I wasn't mad at that. So to me, and here's the other thing. Honestly, we're against Clutch. It's like if we get a less than ideal draft, I'm not too stressed about it. I think like if we had a drastically bad draft, no, okay, cool. Like, yes, that's a problem. Let's do something about it or whatever. Let's complain in Reddit. But honestly, I don't think our draft came out that bad. So I'm not sure what it is about Clutch that scrambles our brain. Maybe we were prepping for the 55-minute game, so we just didn't think it would end so soon.
Yeah. Here's a weird thought. We won more games against Clutch in the spring than we did in the summer.
That is true.
That doesn't make sense.
That is true. And that we owe that to the 100 Talk buff, because we were there. We were present for that Clutch win.
Here's one thing that may have contributed to the outcome here is they did bring Ye Olde Huni to this match.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes.
Yeah.
We saw Ye Olde. I don't know where that was invented, but we got Ye Olde Huni back.
Yeah. He showed up.
Was wrecking the team fights. He played the team fights so well. Like we're all clumped like in jungle, and they're coming to us from like two sides, and Huni flanks and gets through the team all the way to the other side. He's just bouncing all around and
Cuts
doing
through
a ton of damage every single time. Huni, yeah, that's actually a good point. Like Huni may have single-handedly just wrecked us in this game.
Yeah, I don't think we had a great answer. I mean, you look at the draft we had. I don't think we had a great answer for an activated Akali. There's so much burst potential there, and he was playing it really well too. That there's not a lot of opportunity for us to stop that. I mean, as a Rakan, what are you going to do, right? As a Jarvan, what are you going to do? You can't Cataclysm that. You're going to ult out. Like there are just not a lot of answers. And Kaisa Corki's got nothing. Poppy's really your only hope of stalling the Akali in a team fight. And Poppy can only be in one place at one time. So I do think we saw that Akali just feasting. And it was ye olde Huni, and he came and wrecked, man.
Well, that made me so sad. Because that put us into a position, and now I'm ready to transition, Jordan. Heads up. I'm transitioning. If you're going to interrupt me, now's the time.
All right. I invite you to transition us.
I appreciate your permission. Look, it put us into a situation where our destiny is essentially out of our hand, right? Like we have to beat CLG, but we also had to get lucky with how the other games played out, which OpTic had to lose. Thank goodness they did, but that put us in a must-win against CLG. And you don't want to be playing a must-win against the number 2 team in the league, right? That is not the position you want to find yourself in. So, naturally, I was thinking to myself, well, this one is probably over.
Yeah, I went into this one fully expecting to just have a disappointing downer outcome. And I saved it until Sunday night just because I had to. And I kind of was like, I'll see what we get, right?
Man, we got a classic. We got one of the most thrilling and dramatic games that we've had as 100 Thieves fans. Some of the others being like clutch games.
I would say, I would say probably one of the games of the split, just from between any two teams.
It was crazy. It was dramatic. There were turnarounds. There were plays that should not have been possible.
Huge steals, incredible pushes for the Nexus.
This was really crazy. So let's talk about it. Let's break this one down a little bit. On the draft side, the Yuumi ban came out again for whatever reason, and other than that, like people seem to think that CLG really just had a terrible draft. Okay, so I was hoping you could weigh in and tell me if you feel like this was a bad draft from CLG.
Sorry, I'm doing a little chuckle at our show notes here. We've got their draft as Tahm Kench, Jarvan, Sona, Kennen,
Biofrost as himself.
Biofrost as Biofrost.
New champ reveal. Biofrost is just running around in his jersey on the Rift.
I think this is it was really interesting to watch. I had cast an academy game earlier. It was Golden Guardians Academy, and they played Sona Tahm Kench, and it was so oppressive. It was so bad. Now I think that was maybe like two nerfs ago for Tahm Kench, so he could just like spam his spells. He could devour every 4 seconds. It was insane. Like the Sona not only was never in danger, but even if she was, she would just be devoured, and then so you could not do anything against that team. They've made changes, I think, since to both champions that prevent that from happening, which is good. They should do. So I think it's one of those where, as I heard people talking about it, CLG's comp was just trying to do too many different things, and in a way that was almost purely in conflict with its own composition, right? Like you had kind of 2 or 3 different win conditions that they obviated the other win conditions. Like you couldn't possibly accomplish any of them fully. So that I think was the thing that felt the biggest issue for them to me. That being said, this was a classic. Like and that I think that goes to they are the second best team. They're the second best record. They didn't end that way in the league at the time, and so they made a lot out of what I would say was a little draft.
Well, I mean, that's why we have you on the show, because you're smarter than me. Because it just didn't seem that egregiously bad to me. But I'll chalk that up to me being an idiot.
Well, here's the secret, Cole. I just listened to the pre and post game show, which we know you don't.
I
never
never
you didn't know what
do.
foldy sheets were.
I never listen to pre and post. That's why I have Biofrost in there as playing himself. I just don't. I don't want to be contaminated, man. I want to be original, even if I suck. Okay, but look, the mistake they did make is giving us Sejuani, right? Now, I was thinking, and in fact, I have, like, I don't know if this account is still around, but there's an old Twitter account that's called Freezing Cold Takes, right? And it would retweet people's like terrible takes about stuff once they play out. And I tweeted that I'm not sure I feel good about a Kali for Ryu or something like that.
Yes.
So, something along those lines where it's like, oh, I'm not, I don't know about this one, guys.
If you're a Twitter follower, you will notice that the man Jackson himself, he chimed in on that one.
He said that he hit me with one of the most frustrating tweets to ever get, and that's "This aged well," right?
Yeah.
Well.
Yep. Hey, you tweet as you see it.
That's right,
man.
and hats off to Jackson. But what I saw was that Ryu wasn't on the Corki, and
which, by the way, we didn't talk about, but in that last game, that was not a dominant Corki game.
Yeah. Well, yes. Well, I mean, just so many things
maybe
were
that's
just not good. I just want to forget that game. Anyway, in fact, we actually, let's see, what was the draft order here?
It's a good thing you have a $70 memento to always remember that game by.
Oh man, that's terrible. The Victor. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was asking about the Victor because to me that seemed like a good pick for him. Something that's been in his back pocket since early on in the split that hasn't really made a resurgence yet.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I was looking for.
And his second most champion is split, and I feel like we haven't seen it since probably like 4 or 5.
Let me be clear. We banned Corki in this game. Corki was banned by us, so we kept Ryu away from that pick. And to me, that's
right. We picked up Akali in the first round and then banned Corki in the second round of bans.
All this to say, I mean, I was excited about Afremu on Pike and then amazing on Sejuani, but I was feeling a little shaky. We did get, by the way, another weird Afremu death. So this was 2 games in a row where we saw that. And I don't know if you remember this, but he was, I don't know if he was just trying to harass under mid tower, and he just got crescendoed, stunned in place, and promptly erased from the game.
Yeah, Turret helped out with that one.
So that was 2 games in a row that we saw the return of this weirdness. And
Stick says Sona was giving us fits. That dude was playing out of his mind on Sona.
The difference, though, is that we didn't let mistakes like that do anything to rattle us. In fact, as you alluded to earlier, this was the most decisive game we've seen in a long time from the team. And that's, we've trumpeted the fact that we're more decisive now as a drastic improvement. Even with that improvement, this was one of the most decisive games we ever saw. I particularly point to what happened when they stole Baron from us, which was just a weird play. The Baron steal didn't look like it was even going to happen in that situation. It's like all of a sudden the damage stopped coming out. There's this massive window, but then Baron went from like 1100 to 0 really quick. And that,
it was a combo, right? The Jarvan flagged in, popped up, amazing. You couldn't smite it, and then they just burst it down. It was really, it was incredibly challenging to pull off, but they nailed it.
So you look at the situation, right? You're coming off of a loss to Clutch. you're in this tightly contested game where you're playing for the end of your season, and you have what should be a mega tilting play happen, right? And instead of just letting it all fall apart from that point, it was, no, let's push mid.
Well, first,
let's
kill everyone who's here.
Thank you for backing me up. Let's kill
all these
everybody that we can.
LeBlanc gifted us a little bit on that one by distorting out and in of the pit.
Oh,
but
yeah. There's like a fat
we cleaned
finger
up
or something, right?
Yeah, it was a fat finger, which sucks. But hey, I mean, I think it goes to that was a hectic 2 seconds. Yeah, a lot happened.
And but yeah, so we mopped up, and then we just ran it down the mid and crushed and took an in-hid and saved our own lives.
Like we had a Baron buff.
In the face of a Baron buff. And I am quite confident that if we didn't do that, that would have been game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because they were then trying. We cleaned up all the way to the Nexus, and then for basically the rest of the game, there was either always the threat of us backdooring them because we don't need minions to destroy your Nexus if the inhib's down, or there were actually super minions marching to the Nexus to kill it. So if that play didn't happen, you can think about all the plays that happened after that. Those plays would have gone differently because there would have been one element less of pressure on the map for them to be thinking about, attending to, dedicating resources to. So you're totally right. That play, while it didn't end the game, in that play itself, it allowed us to actually continue to play the game.
Yeah, and it wasn't the only time that happened. Like, Ryu was basically the magical savior that we sometimes see, that we often see, on this Akali. And he was just, was so laser guided onto Stixay that really, really saved us. His double kill, when he was certain death, there were maybe 4 of them that he was fighting. He was 1v4, I think, inside their base.
Yeah.
And he pulled off a combo and took 2 of them down, got a double kill before they were able to get. And I mean, he kills the damage from their side.
Yeah.
He knew knew that there is one way that the team is going to survive this, and that's for me to kamikaze and kill Stixay. And he did. And it was wild. Like, he just went right in there, blew him up, and that was the end.
Well, and I mentioned earlier that Stixay was playing that Sona. I mean, that was kind of in the middle of the game, that was kind of a Sona masterclass. Like, he outplayed us purely a couple of times. He basically didn't get to play the game from mid-late game on because he was always blown up. Ryu always blew him up, either at the start of the fight or before he could really get into the fight. I think my favorite play, I mean, obviously the double kill was so insane because he ults over and basically bursts, I think it was Stixay down, and then he turns around and gets a Q off as he is dying, right? Like in his dying breath, and gets another kill. So you could look at that play and say, wow, that was unexpected. That kill, unexpected. The Q at the end of it was absolute madness. Like, there's no way that should have happened. And it absolutely did. They wouldn't have had to even hurry. They probably would have walked it down mid, end of the game, maybe stopped off, grabbed Drake on the way. Like, who knows? Because I think respawn times are 45 seconds at that point. But the play that I loved so much, and if you have a chance to go back and watch the VOD, do it. It's a fight in River, and Ryu is coming up through their blue buff, and they put on vision for CLG, and it's Stixay at the back, like he's coming down to the river in the ramp in the river, and Ryu just appears and blows him up. And like, he's completely stunned. He has no chance. There's no stopwatch. There's no flash. It's nothing. He just gets completely exploded. It's
one of those, and I don't remember if it was this exact play, but sometimes you get those calls that are really funny from the casters where it's like, Stixay's gone. Like, that's all it is. Yeah. You're not sure what happened.
It's like the
play by play. Stixay's gone.
Right,
it's like they realize that Stixay is no longer on the map.
Right. Which also happened, I think, with Afro
Yeah.
at one point. There's another fight where it was just like you realize suddenly that one of our guys is dying. Like, what happened?
A
But yeah,
wild
I mean,
Ryu
Ryu
appeared.
over the wall in a flash, not literally flash, but a dash, and and he blew him up. And that was, that's how we started talking about this. Is he was like a laser guided missile to Stixay.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Well,
so
thanks to his sacrifice, RIP, we were able to pull off this win. And the importance of that can't be overstated because that was literally keeping the split alive for us. So you would think, right, that wait. I have to stop my own transition because we need to give some kudos out to our friend FakeGod. FakeGod on Gangplank had himself a dang good game, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
That kid was looking very confident on there. Now, I get that you can press R as Gangplank and you get the assist, I get that.
Yeah.
But he still, I think his line was like 5, 2, and 10 maybe in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his barrels were hitting.
He was critical.
He had a couple of really
critical to what we were doing.
Yeah.
And he was
his lane.
There was one time he was split pushing bot that might have saved the game for us. Because the CLG had to respond because he was like taking T2 tower and shoving a wave in. FakeGod looked great in this game, and this is really encouraging because again, I see him as someone who just is building right now, and that's going to be really important as we get into this roster speculation talk and we're figuring out like who are we going to keep, who are we going to get rid of, who are we going to replace, or are we just going to run it back and keep it the same? Like there's so many of those questions, and most of the split was basically dedicated to finding out if FakeGod is going to be viable going forward, and we still got lane issues, which we'll talk about, but this dude is looking more and more comfortable. I think he's coming into his own, and he's had now in the last handful of games, he's had a couple where he's stood out, and that's a great thing for us.
Yeah, and we won't get too far into it, but keep in mind these last couple of games were the games that we said last week we got to watch, we got to keep an eye out on him to understand how he's going to play when the stakes are high. And I won't go any further into it than that right now. But like you said, that Gangplank game was awesome.
Okay, well, that bought us enough time to go to OpTic for the tiebreaker game. And so we split with OpTic during the regular season. That's the whole reason we even had a shot. Because if we would have dropped that other OpTic game, we would not even had a chance to be in this tiebreaker situation based on our play. Fortunately, we picked up that one win, setting us up for this game where we promptly, in my opinion, drafted against ourselves. It was literally like we were playing against ourselves in this draft.
Challenge mode.
And so specifically what I'm talking about is the first two bans that came out from our side were Sejuani and Azir, which are two of the high priority champions for us. Obviously, Amazing is basically a Sejuani or nothing player at the moment. He's okay on J4. Yeah, I'll give him. He's okay on J4. But his Sejuani record is way above everything. Greg is small sample size, but Sejuani is clearly the priority champion for him. Okay, and we banned it right away. Then we banned Azir, which is kind of like a backup champion for Ryu when he doesn't get Corki, right? But guess what? OpTic banned Corki right before that. So it was like OpTic banned Rakan and then Corki, and we responded with an Azir ban. Like, it was weird. It was just straight up weird. And then we banned Yuumi, which, whatever. And they banned Akali because they had watched Ryu save the game single-handedly multiple times. Yeah. So right. From a ban perspective, I feel like we targeted ourselves almost. And
well, like you're thinking that if we wouldn't have banned Akali, they would have had to, or wouldn't have banned Yuumi, they would have had to ban it because somebody's got.
Well, they had the third. They were banning first, right? So Yuumi would have been in play. But I mean, you look at it like the other thing is they first picked Sylas, which left us the chance to take away Aatrox. Newsflash: Dokla is good at Aatrox. He's really good at Aatrox. You know who else is pretty dang good at Aatrox? FakeGod.
FakeGod.
You
Yeah.
know? But we left that
He's
there
good.
for the taking. Like, it was just really hard to watch. And I felt like it wasn't that we had a bad draft. It felt like we were actively working against ourselves. And there's a difference between that. And I don't even understand where that came from. Like, someone who's smarter than me, you or Chad or whoever, enlightened me as to what we were doing.
Oh, I don't know what we're doing. I mean, I look at our first 2 picks. Well, okay, and I know you know this. The thought behind banning Sejuani is they have first pick. We were afraid of them having Sejuani, so we banned it. That's the sum total of that decision. Could you have rolled dice? Maybe they don't first pick it. Maybe they don't want it. We probably knew something. We probably knew enough. Well, we know Medios. And I suppose we just didn't want him to have that opportunity.
Well, he ended up on a comfort champion that he's really strong on, though.
Yeah. So, I mean, pick your poison.
Yeah, well, we picked the wrong poison.
Yeah, we did.
At least give it a chance.
So,
and even if they take Sejuani, well, it's like, guess what? Then that means they didn't make their mid lane pick. You know, so we can focus in on stealing good things away from Crown.
Yeah. So if you look back at the first 2 games on the weekend, Ezreal got banned both games, right, by the other team. Third ban, CLG. Second ban, Clutch. So my thought is probably that either, I mean, we know Bang's good on Ez, of course. You know, that's a good champion for him. There's no doubt. And probably that's somebody who other teams scouting intel is telling them he's doing, you know, on this patch, he's very good on Ezreal, right? It's strong or whatever, just the meta, it works well for him. A quick note on that. I don't think I've ever seen so many Braum blocked Ezreal ults. It was heartbreaking.
It was
to
a
see. I don't think a
thing.
single one hit more. Yeah. I don't think a single one hit more than Braum. It was a huge bummer. I mean, that's an exaggeration because you can cast that spell once every 20 seconds for the late game, but he was just all over it. So yeah, for me, the real head scratcher is Karma, and maybe that's getting at a limited champion pool right now for you. I mean, he is newer into this. I mean, could we have not have taken the LeBlanc? Like we saw him on Assassin the game before. We've seen him play LeBlanc before very well. Karma just doesn't. I know that Karma is very strong in the meta, and people like Karma, and you it's kind of, I think, considered one of those, like, you got to ban it. I think especially in other regions, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of Karma play. It felt so. It just felt like a non-factor, a complete non-factor.
Well, and as pointed out by Falcon Hero 123 in the chat, it feels like, you know, Karma can go top, Karma can go support, and still be super effective. You know, so if you're going to get the OP champion, there are other places for it to be. Right.
I mean, and probably what they thought was, who here is the most competent Karma player?
Yeah.
Maybe it's Ryu. But even knowing that it's a flex, right? You pick that in the first round of picks. You have the second round to still pick something else, right? If you want to put that, you know, maybe you wait and see. Do we want to see what they're going to take mid? And I just don't know. I'm kind of I'm reaching.
Yeah, there's just a lot of stuff here that played out weird, and like we can kind of debate and get into the weeds on just how weird it was, or just how like poor the draft was. You know, some people are arguing it's not really that bad or whatever. The fact is, our champion pool is the more limited champion pool. It's more crucial for us to get on our champions than for another team. There's like teams where you can't really ban against them very well, you know, and so you do what you can and you get out. We're a team that you can ban against very well, so don't help them do that. You know, don't mess it up. And as a result, what do we get? We got Ryu being as close to a non-factor as I think he can be.
As he's been all season, I'd say. I think that was his least consequential game.
And I saw him doing a lot of damage with his poke, like at the very end of the game.
The poke is strong.
And I saw him looking
especially
for opportunities to take out backline and everything, but you know, you just couldn't find it.
Yeah.
And I'm not used to
Like,
Ryu not being able to deliver something for us this split.
well, I think that's what has made Ryu so good this split. High mobility champions, flanking champions. I mean, we just spent 5 minutes talking about the way he completely eliminated Sona from the CLG game. And that was all due to his mobility. Either his ability to get behind a fight, jump a wall, blow him up in the back line, or in a 1v4, get where he wants to be and press Q, right? And blow people up. That's not what he was doing on Karma. I know that for sure, you know. And I don't think that's because he was misplaying it. I just think that's not the right champion for that kind of play.
How did you feel about the Bard pick?
You know.
Wow, I didn't know this was going to be so difficult.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. Look, in theory, I'm a fan of pocket picks. I think they're fun to watch. I like to see them. I think it's a cool thing about this game in general, League of Legends, is that there's the potential to have pocket picks. Super exciting to see it come out. I don't feel like it was used to good effect. And I don't even know that was Afro's fault. I mean, I think we saw another kind of weird. Did we see a weird Afro death?
I
can't
remember. I
sure.
didn't have that in my notes at least. But what we did have that I think you can attribute to Afromu is I'm not sure the ult ever landed. He missed so many of those things.
He caught Tristana once. Okay,
cool.
Mid jump,
but
which was good.
A lot of them missed, man. A lot of them missed.
Yeah.
And
you kind of fire them into the middle.
They came out early too.
And they would
come out early in a team fight, miss, and then guess what? Like, we don't have anything left to really fight with, because there are a couple of attempted engages that would have been really great if they came off well, but we burned through a lot of stuff quickly, and then we're just sitting ducks basically from that point on. So again, like, I understand, like, I agree with you on the pocket pick thing. I think that it's a good pocket pick for Afromu, and I was excited when it came out. But when the ults aren't landing, and I think only a couple of the like stuns worked really well, as also you're just not gonna have that success.
Like, think about that kit. If a team fight is starting and you miss your ult, you have a Q, and you have an escape tunnel. Like, that's kind of it, like, and then you get that little health pickup thing. There's just not a lot for you to do, like, if you're doing a 5v5 or, it's just like a standard team fight, not the champion that you're going to be able to win that fight with.
It's a powerful utility kit when it's in the right
for
hands.
Sure. There are games where that kit wins
it's
you
probably
the game.
Like Quasi-Cat in Twitch chat is pointing out. He says Bard into 3 champs with dashes and jumps is weird. And that's got that's honestly wait so that's Silas, Aatrox. Braum has a dash to a champion, right? To a friendly champion. Tristana has her jump.
Yeah.
I mean, the Tristana jump's kind of buffered.
Tunnel.
So maybe that's a little more difficult, but yeah. It's like
he was aiming at a lot of moving targets.
He was. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in the bot lane, strictly speaking, I think lane phase went pretty well for us.
Yeah, I mean, they wrecked lane phase. There was no stopping them. They were poking constantly. I think they had
definitely
first
the beginning
down.
They were and the very beginning, the early phase.
Oh, it didn't even out of it. You're right.
They kind of got worked out of it a little bit, but still came out with a decent CS lead, looking strong. So lane phase, I wasn't mad at all. It was just in the team fights where that pick went awry.
I just can't help but think that a LeBlanc would have been a cool addition to this team.
Well, and we've seen Ryu on LeBlanc at like Worlds, right? Popping off against G-Rex. I mean, I know it's G-Rex, but still.
Top 15.
It's G-Rex, but it's OpTic.
Yeah. I mean, he clearly, like, I think the thing to take from that is clearly the guy knows how to play LeBlanc well.
Well, so I guess that kind of answer. I was going to ask this listener question from Dr. Nolly on Twitter. who said, which team comp do you think we should have picked in the OpTic match, or do you think they would have been outplayed no matter what? So clearly, like the LeBlanc is an idea. We talked about how the draft went weird. I think this is a game that is winnable with the right team comp on both sides. You know what I mean? Like I think if we get our way and we have a solid team comp, this is a winnable game for us. We've won against them before. If I'm not mistaken, I think Crown had like a really rough game before this one as well. So
he got like hard camped and just absolutely destroyed. He was 0-6. He died 6 times.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like he's vulnerable.
I want to say he was playing Azir.
I can't remember, to be honest. But yeah, it's one of those things where the opportunity was there and we just didn't show up.
Yeah, and we had to. I mean, win or go home.
So when you're talking about the actual plays that led to this, one of those is the attempted Baron take. And I don't know if we were just trying to bait or if we were actually trying to put in a Baron take. But Sir Radley brought that one up on Twitter as well. So he said, in the game against OpTic, how do we feel about them trying to take Baron over Mountain when they didn't have any dragons? Well, OpTic had 2. Yeah. You know what I mean? So OpTic had Mountain and I think Ocean. And we had no Drakes. We tried to rush the Baron. Like I said, it could have been a bait. I need to watch it back to see if this was, a bait attempt. But we got pushed off.
It was like the Baron take. It was so slow,
and I think,
dude.
Did we trade 1-for-1 on kills? I think we traded kills and just had to reset. But because of that, we didn't have the opportunity to get the Mountain Drake that was on the table.
I think if I'm remembering right, and this, to be clear, I watched this at like 1 a.m.
While you're holding Cream Hoodie.
I was not expecting a tiebreaker. Yeah, I was not expecting a tiebreaker, and then I saw we won against CLG, and I was like, I gotta watch this. I gotta see. If I remember right, I think we had come out of a fight. We had an advantage on the battlefield, and then on the Rift. That's what I was looking for. And then with that advantage, what we elected to do was, this is kind of like when people talk about this being a turn-based game. With our turn, we went to Baron. And I think that's what Radley's picking up on, is we spent that time slowly whittling down the Baron. So if you have a numbers advantage, which if I remember right, we did, and all you get out of it is like a 1-for-1 trade, that's a losing turn. 100%. That's a losing turn. You cannot get out of that and feel like, it's not an equal trade. So yeah, it was not good.
And I think that was the play that the game turned on. And unfortunately just went the wrong way.
I think, and Dusty Man and Chad is saying us not taking any Drakes killed us. I definitely got that feeling as well as the game went on, where, when they went to Baron, the thing melted. I think that has a lot to do with the team comp.
And the 2 Mountain Drakes, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Trist is going to just melt that thing too. So, yeah, it's...
Drakes, I think we got worse towards the end of the split with Drakes, because we started out with it being a big problem, and then we kind of fixed it. At least we were making it a priority. I don't know if we had like higher Drake priority or whatever, but at least we were doing better. That seemed to go out the window towards the end of this split.
Think about this a little bit. There's at least one play where, so in this game, again, these 3 all kind of blend together. I know that it seemed like Amazing was he was spending more time in top lane, and I think that was really the case with the CLG game, and that was the big thing that helped get Gangplank ahead. When we spend more time in top lane, we have less ability to contest Drakes or to position to take Drakes. And I know for a fact that there were times where we were punished in that way. We would make a play in top lane, and the other team would say, okay, we see that you are invested in top. Good luck walking down here to take this Drake before we do. And we just couldn't. So if we're thinking about playing around top more, we have to be that much more confident in our mid and bot lanes to cover that. And
that may be a vulnerability in the team where we need that attention elsewhere. So Amazing can't find time to get the Drakes because he's got to get our laners ahead.
And I think, I mean, so much of the split, FakeGod has been that sponge, right? So my without going back and doing an in-depth analysis and rewatching games, I would say that when we've been more comfortable with Amazing spending that time in bot lane and helping to get Bang ahead, it never really felt like Bang was ahead in a lot of these games. And I know that there were times where he certainly had a lead in lane, but he didn't have the kind of like this. None of these games were pop-off games for Bang. And so I don't know if it was a strategic decision to shift that focus toward top lane and to try to play more through top. But I would say that we have a more winning look when FakeGod is more sponge than carry.
Yeah.
I think he plays that sponge.
Well, let's take that opportunity then to put this whole OpTic game behind us, and let's put all the games this split behind us. Move on to some more general things, and you'd put a pin on FakeGod and pressure, and just looking at the last games of this split, we were very interested with this. Was one of the final pieces of the puzzle with FakeGod. Is like, how is he going to perform when the pressure's super high? From a basic stat level, against Clutch, he went 1-3-2 and finished 66 CS behind. I should probably have CSD at 10 or whatever, but I have overall. CLG 5-2-10 on the Gangplank, finished down 63 CS, and then in OpTic he was 1-2-3, and he went even CS.
Yep.
So it wasn't great. The CLG game though was very good, and I think like having him on Renekton, we were excited for, but they weren't able to get him the lead early in the OpTic game, and that's something that we just weren't successful at that. Like you mentioned, Amazing's trying to make that happen, and it didn't. So the Renekton pick didn't end up working out in here. So how are you feeling about him? Knowing how he's performing under pressure, and knowing that we have to make a decision about him going forward.
Yeah. We'll go way more in depth on this in a future episode for sure. My thought in general on FakeGod is I think there is a role that he can play in this team as it exists currently that provides us with a pretty good look. I think it's kind of like he feels like a role player in a way. And I think that role is right now survive lane, don't fall so far behind. Because we did see games where he fell so far behind that he could not contribute in the mid to late game. So that's kind of his job. And I don't think that playing through top is something that we are able to do with FakeGod in top lane. And that's not really an evaluation of him. I think that's more an evaluation of the overall roster, because we saw that with Someday as well. When we tried to play through top lane and win through top lane with Someday, what we got was a really strong champion and a weak team, and it never worked. It never worked for us to have Someday carry us all the way. Like and that may just be more of a game mechanic. I think we've heard pro players talk about that recently, where the days of 1v9 are gone. And I think that's in large part by design. That's not fun, right? Especially not when you're talking about like.
I was just gonna say, man, I wish the days of 1v9 are gone, because it seems like they're still for my games.
Yeah, you get a bad enough team and anything can happen. But they don't want that to be the case, right? They don't want one player to be able to take over the game so much. And I think we see that in the pro play too. So my assessment of FakeGod is we've seen that this team can win more with him than our previous iteration in spring. So I think that's a positive, and I think you have to look at that favorably. Is that the right answer for us long term? I don't know. And that's what we got to grind on and figure out in the off season.
Yeah, with all of this time, now that we have 7 months or something to kind of sort all this out, it's very depressing.
It is. It's a long time. Can you imagine as somebody professionally tied?
I guess it's 5.
7 months.
Yeah.
It's 5. 5 or 7. I mean, still 5 is a long time. That's a long time. So much is going to happen between now and when we play professionally again. That's a sad thing.
Yeah. So there's the big looming question for me that I just keep thinking about, because whether or not we made it to playoffs seemed like the biggest answer to this question. Okay. And that is, was this split successful? Obviously, our definition of success has changed from 2018. Coming off of a last place finish in 2019, spring 2019, I would say that my hopes for the team were to diagnose properly what our problems were and show concrete progress to it. And I didn't expect us to be a contender for a title. I did think that we could pull it together and be a playoff team. Obviously, that didn't happen. Yet, at the same time, we clearly ratcheted things up from where we were. Like the FakeGod reuse substitution had a materially positive effect on the team. That's indisputable. Mm-hmm. And if you throw out the first, first 2 weeks where they were in the roster, then it looks even better on paper for them. You know what I mean? Because when you make a change like that, you need time for it to settle in until you really get to what you are. So I'm kind of feeling like in that way there was some success, but I guess finding ourselves in 8th place and the disappointing manner in which we lost, I don't know how I feel about this question anymore. I felt pretty clearly that, there were successes to build on from this split. But man, I'm having a hard time answering this question. So, in your opinion, if you want to just spitball some things, this doesn't have to be your committed to the record honest full thing. Just think about it out loud, I guess. Do you think this split was a success?
My gut reaction is no, and I'll tell you why. I've been thinking about this a little bit too. And I think for me, it comes down to the fact that we lost. In essence, what we did is we lost in the end to the other teams who were trying to make it. And so the place that leaves me is we can't say that we are better than Clutch. We can't say we're better than Gold Guardians. We can't say we're better than OpTic. We can say we're better than FlyQuest and Echo Fox. Echo Fox, by the way, who's no longer even in the league. So, hooray. And I think that's, to kind of get back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, it makes those big wins that we got feel a lot more like consolation prizes, right? Where we can say, well, we picked up wins on, against TSM, Cloud9, we played TL super close down to the wire. It just feels like in the long term, if you think about this is franchise, right? There are other franchises right now on a similar journey as us. And I think that they have made more progress than us this season, certainly this the first half of the season in spring. And what we learned in the last moments of the summer is that the season overall, they made more progress. They are going to playoffs. We're not. We can't lose sight of how weird our first season in the league was to kind of screw up all of our expectations, and the calibration there is completely off, because we're like, so we made it to Worlds, but we also didn't make it to playoffs. So what do we make of any of this? And so for me, I think that's what it comes down to. If you can't say that you're better than the other teams at the bottom of the table, then I would say it's not successful.
The complicating factor in that, and complicates it in a negative way for us, is that we've spent so much money on these players that we have. One of our
Yes.
most expensive players sitting in academy right now.
Right.
I think in Travis Gafford's thing he revealed that 100 Thieves is the second highest payroll, right, of all the teams in the LCS.
And our people have
Yeah,
said that.
okay, that's been corroborated. And we're sitting at 8th place. So
That's inverse
yeah,
for anybody keeping
that's
track.
not. It feels especially bad. Like I said, like variance is a very frustrating thing. Like it's frustrating to know that we have a high ceiling, and that we just don't typically reach it.
Yep.
And that's a long-term problem. Like I'm not entirely convinced right now that we can build on this roster, because there are challenges. Like I need to think this through a lot more. This is a lot of the reason why, by the way, that we're postponing roster talk, is it's a really complicated scenario, and we're trying to sort out where we stand on it. But yeah, it's just hard to feel good about the way that this entire year went, considering the resources that went in. And I one of our a friend of the show, Aaron McCunis, who is with the Smite Steel podcast, and he is a writer, he's a journalist, and he's working with Newegg right now. He tweeted at us at Aaron_T_M. Do you think losing like this actually matters that much to Nadeshot? Or do you think this brand is more a brand first and a team second? So I wanted to address that really quick, because I think the money spent is not because, oh yeah, let's just like throw money around. I think the money is spent intentionally in a way that was believed to help the team. Okay? And I think that winning matters to Nadeshot. I think winning matters to the staff of the team, and the team itself. Like, this does matter. I feel strongly that they care about this. Nadeshot tweeted earlier today that they're not content with how things went this split. You know, and we heard him say going into the beginning of summer that there were going to be big changes, and there were. Like, they delivered on that promise. I think the organization wants to win championships in whatever esport we're going to. I mean, the Fortnite guys did really well at the World Cup. The Call of Duty team is taking home 2 championships. They're going for a COD champs win. And they put resources, they put money into the players, and they try and win this thing. And so I'm firmly in the camp that they're going to be doing their best to figure out how to move forward from here. This is just where maybe being in like a weaker region in the world is especially frustrating, because it seems like the options are so limited.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's the pool. The pool is a restricting factor for sure. No, I definitely agree with you on your assessment of, like, I don't think this is just a status thing, right? Like, I don't think that Thieves bought into the LCS so that they could. It's not about legitimacy, right? Being here is not what they're interested in doing, and I think that the amount of money they're spending on players and staff and personnel and training facilities and, you know, coaches and what's Dr. Doug, right? Like, they're spending money to try to win. And I think some people might dismiss comments that are made about, oh, we're not happy, we're gonna make changes, we're gonna do things to get better. Some people might dismiss that, and I'm not subtweeting Aaron on this, or whatever you want to say, because I don't think he is saying that. But I think some people might dismiss that as like, yeah, you have to say that. You're going to say that because you have to. I really believe that. And I believe it because I think that the DNA of this organization is winning. And I think that comes in large part from Nadeshot, and where he comes from. I think a lot of it also comes from the fact that there are people who have invested in this team, not because they sell a lot of apparel, but because they believe that long term this organization has relevancy. and you don't remain relevant in this space if you don't win. You know, if you don't win, and by the way, and if you invest a lot of money in the team, suddenly what you have is a business decision to make, which says it's time for us to stop doing that because we're not getting the return on it that we need. You don't spend the second most of any team in the LCS because you want to appear to be legitimate. You do it because you want to win. Because I think this team understands that legitimacy comes through trophies and banners. So yeah, I believe it when they say that they're going to be back and they're going to be stronger and they're going to do whatever they can to get there. I think what we've got to figure out, what they've got to figure out, is how does that happen? Because very clearly, there isn't a one-to-one correlation on how much money you're spending, and what your result at the end of the split is. That's the puzzle that they've got to solve.
So kind of along these lines, just a comment from one of our Twitter followers, friend of the show, Cody, at 100T Blade. He said, ending outside of playoffs is depressing and disappointing, but it's far from the end of the world. This split was meant to be a Band-Aid fix, and we got way more out of it than we deserved after starting 0-5. I am going to take that tweet as like it's like the thesis of what I'm preparing for the roster show, or of like looking at what we're going forward. It's like, is this tweet from Cody the way it is? Like, it's so convoluted, it's so complicated. I feel like, yeah, there was improvement there. Like, we did start terribly, and we had a shot at playoffs on the back of that. It's like, that's great, but man, what did we learn? I think the things that we learned are that we may not be in a position to be successful going forward. So I don't know. Look, we should probably wrap this up soon, but we have our contractual obligation that we love so much. Look,
We do.
I photoshopped Pr0lly onto the cover of 50 Cent Get Rich or Die Trying when he tweeted fix 100T or die trying. So, Jordan, the question is it time for him to die? And of course, I mean figuratively. I actually personally, I like the guy. That's Is it time for him to die?
Nobody needs to die. Nobody needs to die. You know what? I think I feel a bit hypocritical if I say that we don't need to think about whether or not he's the coach next split after everything we just said on is this split a success. You're not going to get. It's not so straightforward to just say, yeah, it's time for him to go, because there's so many other variables you have to think about and take into consideration with that when you make that decision. But we have 2 full seasons now, and so I what I'm prepared to say at this time is I am interested in considering his continued position on this team, as I will every other person and player in this offseason. And I just think that's the fair thing to do. When you think about next split, if you're not happy with this one, which I don't think any fan is, because we didn't make playoffs, the next step is to think about, are there changes that need to be made, if any, that will help us to play better next split? And right now, what I'll say for Pr0lly Watch, my contractual obligation is, I think it's time for us to look at options and think about whether or not he is the right person for the job. That's where I'll leave my piece.
So I think I've come to the conclusion that Pr0lly he can thrive in some certain contexts and be really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't, like with this group of players, it hasn't worked that way. I think he's competent, and I think he's a fine coach. I think coaches who know what they're doing are a scarce resource.
Yeah, right. probably even a more limited pool
Yeah.
in players.
And I just don't. I think so. The whole point of Probably Watch, right, is do we think that he's safe or he's not? Right. That's the essential question of Probably Watch, which we probably haven't phrased directly in a long time, but that's where that comes from. Do
Yeah.
we think his
We
think his job is in jeopardy or not? And strictly speaking, I don't think his job is in jeopardy because I don't see an obvious challenger to the throne. Now, Jungle Juice is great, and he's already inside the organization. I don't think they're ready to turn their reins over to him. I don't get that impression. Well, and I love him too. I really like Joseph. Yeah. I think it's been cool to see him on stage for drafts this split. But yeah, I don't think that's really on the table yet, and I don't see an obvious challenger to Pr0lly as the coach. I don't see anywhere where you can look and easily say, "Oh yeah, this would be an improvement if we had this guy in here." And because of that, I don't think at this time his job's in jeopardy still.
Yeah. Well, and I would even say, I don't know that we can know. I think that's maybe the harder thing about coaches. Who knows what the split is between Pr0lly and Jungle Juice on contributions to strategy, to draft. Maybe it's 80-20, Pr0lly, Joseph. Maybe it's 60-40, right? We just don't know. We have no insight into that. It's so much different from players because you can look at a player and say, FakeGod played that whole game. He was the only one behind the keyboard. So I have a pretty good idea of how well he does, and then, so it's just so hard, especially in a position where you have an assistant coach who is more prominent.
Well, we'll have to see what the response from the organization is over the next few months. I will say this: I think because they care about winning, as we pointed out, they're going to give a honest assessment of that situation. I don't think this is a case where they're just going to let him coast. But yeah, I think for now he's probably going to be safe. One final thing, and this is an easy one. This is an easy, lighthearted one from Dylan Craven 3 Twitter. You might know him as Craven Dylan in Twitter or in Twitch chat. You might know him as the person who's given away like 70 subs in our channel. Who says, with the season done, will we see an increase in Rec League or COD job? Jordan?
Yeah. Yes.
We're going to bring you some cool Rec League stuff soon.
We're not planning to take a 5-month break.
We're going to be here. We have off-season content
it's not part of
planned and in the tubes. We're working on it. We'll be doing Rec League, and we'll do some cool things with Rec League that you'll see in the not too distant future. And on COD job, willing, we'll try and get something going. I'd love to do something around COD Jams, but we honestly we haven't had that conversation yet. So we'll try for you guys, because it's going to be a long off season.
There's only so much roster speculation you can do. That's not going to carry us through to next split.
Okay, so yes, it's been sad. I'm sad, but
yes. Can we end on a positive note?
Yes.
I have a proposal for that note. Can I just say, the 100 Talk community, the 100 kids, what an amazing group of people. What an amazing and fun group and community to have experienced this season of sorrow with. You and I have been doing this for over a year now. We got to do a lot of Worlds coverage. I feel like this season, while on the Rift has been disappointing, and it's hard to say that it's felt successful, I can without hesitation say that I feel like the people who are here, who are joining us for these conversations, who are contributing, who are, the treasury, like, holy cow.
Treasury.
That's it's easy to feel good about that. So, here's one thing I feel super positive about is I can't wait for next split and next season. You know, I think that's going to be great, and we have every intention of continuing this and keeping it going. Can you guys imagine how fun this is going to be when we go back to Worlds? Like that's going to be
Worlds 2020, baby.
Well, 2020. I mean, book your
Book
your flights now, Cole.
Hunter Talk cannot be held responsible for financial advice and stupid decisions.
No. No one in chat. That was not for you. That was me and Cole. We're gonna go. We'll
okay. All right.
When we go back to Worlds, Cole, we have to deliver the Hunter Talk buff. Are you kidding me? We have to be
well,
there.
yes. If 100 Thieves makes Worlds, yes. That's got to happen.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say, since we're ending on a positive note and we love our community, is that I'll just say I'm in New York right now, but I did get an email yesterday that there was a delivery confirmation to my house. There's a package that I was waiting on. And there might be some things in the package of note and consideration for the Hunter Talk community.
Yes.
That's all we'll say.
Yes. We got plans. It's going to be positive stuff. It's going to be fun. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna do our best to fill these next 5 months with some fun. We'll probably watch. I mean, there's going to be a lot of good league happening. It just won't be the best team involved, but
we'll find ways around that. All right. We got plans, people. It's going to be fun. That's going to do it tonight. My hotel Wi-Fi is like groaning under the strain here. It's struggling with your
I'm not
video.
hitting VHS quality.
It struggled with the audio delay and everything. So I apologize that this stream was especially scuffed. We just thought it was important to talk sooner rather than later about this weekend, since it was the end of the split. But we'll be back at the regular location on the regular equipment soon, and we're ready. We're ready to take Hunter Talk community to the next level. So
let's do it. We'll do our part. The org's going to do their part.
You guys are already doing yours.
Yeah.
We love you guys. We miss you already, and we can't wait till the next time we see you. Bye.
Until